President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky urgently flies to Washington for a meeting with Donald Trump. After the 20-point peace plan was publicly presented a couple of days ago, the date and place of the meeting between the two presidents are already known. And at the meeting, Trump and Zelensky are expected to fully finalize the peace plan, approve it, and also sign security guarantees for Ukraine and an economic package for the recovery of our country. But that's not all. In addition, they plan to discuss the fate of Donbass, as well as elections and the referendum in Ukraine. It's telling that as soon as Zelensky announced publicly that a personal meeting with Donald Trump was planned in the near future, the Russians, who just yesterday completely rejected the revised 20-point peace plan, are now urgently calling the White House today to discuss those very same 20 points that were made public. But that's not all. Vitkov has recently begun communicating often with Volodymyr Zelensky, including a conversation last night, despite having actively lobbied for the Kremlin's interests. Earlier, in Washington itself, they are also preparing a certain atmosphere for the meeting between Zelensky and Trump. And today, Republican Senator Lindsey Graham called on Donald Trump to sharply change his rhetoric if Vladimir Putin once again refuses the 20 points of the world. Graham once again called on Trump to recognize Russia as a sponsor of terrorism and to start seizing tankers of the Russian Federation's Shadow Fleet. But in the White House itself, they still want to trade and do business with the Russians after the war, so they are still striving to make this peace deal. My name is Pechiy. Let's discuss this topic together. But before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, like the video, and leave any comment under this episode. It's really great and helps a lot with promoting the video on YouTube. I would be grateful to you for that. Also, subscribe to my Telegram channel Pechiy News. The link is in the description of this video. There we publish breaking news as it comes in, as well as all the announcements about new episodes here on this YouTube channel. So, the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, announced that he will soon meet with the President of the United States, Donald Trump, to discuss ending Russia's war against Ukraine. Quote, "We're not wasting a single day. We've agreed on a high-level meeting with President Trump. A lot could be decided in the near future, even before the new year. And now there are already reports that the meeting is being prepared at Trump's private residence Mar-a-Lago in Florida. If everything goes according to plan, this meeting will take place on December 28th on Sunday." Steven Vitkov is also nearby. Let me remind you, he also has a residence in Florida, in Miami, and Vitkov will definitely be present at this meeting. By the way, a new interesting trend has emerged. On the eve of the announcement about the upcoming meeting with Trump, Zelensky had another phone conversation with Steven Vitkov and Jared Kushner. And here, some observers noted that there is a clear rapprochement between Zelensky and Vitkov, which could benefit Ukraine. After all, if we assume that Vitkov's bias was due to the fact that he only communicated with Russia and did not communicate with Ukraine at all, which was indeed the case. By mid-November, Vitkov had flown to Moscow 6 times to meet with Putin. Plus, he was constantly in touch with Kirill Dmitriev, but he never visited Kyiv and communicated with Ukrainians only during multilateral meetings in Europe. So now there's a chance that Vitkov has finally decided to understand the Ukrainian position, because it's already too obvious that Russia is playing its own game and in reality they don't want any peace at all. After talking with Vitkov and Kushner, Zelensky noted, and I quote, "We have some new ideas which concern formats and meetings and, of course, timing. It will be important if we manage to organize what we agreed on. Some documents are already ready today. I see that they are almost completely finished. We still need to address sensitive details, but with America and the American team, we know how to make this happen. We had a very good conversation. I'm grateful for the constructive and intensive work, for the kind words, and for the Christmas greetings to Ukrainians. I also asked the guys to pass on our Christmas greetings to President Trump and the entire Trump family. Thank you." And later on, Zelensky said Ukrainian negotiation chief Rustem Umerov updated him on recent talks with the Americans. Recently, let me remind you, he met with Trump's special envoy Steven Vitkov and Jared Kushner in Florida. This was just this past weekend, where negotiations lasted for 3 days. They discussed the details of the peace plan developed by the United States and modified as a result of numerous negotiations. And now it's interesting, what exactly will Zelensky and Trump discuss at Mar-a-Lago this Sunday? The latest version of the peace plan contains 20 points, and on December 24th, Zelensky revealed their contents. Well, I think he already knew that a meeting with Trump would definitely take place in the future. The issues of territory and management of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant remain unresolved. Putin stated yesterday that Russia and the United States are discussing joint management of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant without Ukraine's involvement. According to him, the American side is interested in organizing cryptocurrency mining at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. At the same time, United States representatives insist on organizing electricity supplies to Ukraine. In addition, dictator Putin stated that Russia will continue to insist on full control over the Donetsk and Luhansk regions. The Russians are also unhappy with the Ukrainian armed forces' post-war size of 800,000 troops and are demanding more cuts. Nevertheless, as soon as it became known that Zelensky was flying to Florida to meet with Donald Trump, the Russians immediately rushed to call Washington. Just yesterday they said they don't care about the 20-point peace plan and do not accept it. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov stated that Putin immediately ordered an urgent call to Witkoff to discuss the negotiations that the Russian Dmitriev was conducting with the Americans in Miami. Although once again, just yesterday, the Kremlin was shouting at the top of their lungs that they do not accept the revised 20-point peace plans. But today, Peskov states, quote, after Kirill Dmitriev reported to the president about the results of his trip to America, about the results of his contacts with the Americans. This information was analyzed, and by order of President Putin, contact took place between representatives of the Russian and United States administrations. It was decided to continue the dialogue. We still believe that at this time, spreading information about the negotiations could negatively affect the negotiation process. There was a phone contact, and it was decided to continue the dialogue. That's the only thing we can say. Well, and this is an interesting point, because knowing the Russians, if there had been even the slightest success, they would be shouting at the top of their lungs right now that Trump is on their side and so on. They've always done that, but this time they decided to keep quiet. But what's even more interesting is the statement by Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Ryabkov, who suddenly said today that the Kremlin would like to talk to Emmanuel Macron, the French president, who had previously expressed a desire to speak with Putin. And so Ryabkov said that Macron knows how to get in touch with Putin. Although I remind you, not so long ago Putin said, I won't use that word, but in short, he insulted European leaders. Now the Kremlin says that it's necessary to talk to the Europeans too, and here it might seem that the negotiations are at a dead end, the Russians are making their demands, Ukraine doesn't agree, so what's the point of Zelensky flying to the United States to meet with Trump? But don't jump to conclusions. The thing is, Ukraine is working on 5 documents as part of creating a peace agreement to end the war, so it's not just a peace plan. Zelensky says Ukraine is ready to sign and has prepared some documents in the United States. Quote from Zelensky, "We want to discuss a few details about security guarantees with Donald Trump. We have several agreements on security guarantees. These are framework things between us, the United States, and our European colleagues. In my opinion, I see now that the agreement between us and the United States is practically ready. And the question is whether to sign it or not. That's already secondary depending on the format and how our meeting goes. That's why I believe that this document is already on the table. Besides, we have 20 points and there are 4 parties: Ukraine, America, Russia, and Europe. Of course, you can't sign 20 points without Russia and without the Europeans. Yes, it's a 4-party agreement, but we also have bilateral arrangements. In some matters, I think we can already put a period." At the same time, Zelensky added that the plan to end the war in Ukraine, which consists of 20 points, is now 90% ready. However, Ukraine has not received an official response from Russia, and according to Zelensky, this is not surprising because the Ukrainian side communicates exclusively with the United States of America, and they are the ones talking to the unwashed Russians. And now it is important for the Ukrainian delegation to be right in the United States of America when Donald Trump discusses the peace plan with the Russians. And don't even doubt it, on the eve of Trump's meeting with Zelensky this Sunday, Putin will now be practically blowing up the White House phone to be the first to talk to Trump. He's done this more than once already. As soon as Putin hears that Zelensky and Trump are planning to meet, he immediately starts calling Trump non-stop. in order to disrupt any kind of dialogue between the two presidents of the United States and Ukraine. In conclusion, Kyiv's peace plan requires Russian troops to withdraw from Dnipropetrovsk, Mykolaiv, Sumy, and Kharkiv regions. And in Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson, it proposes a division along the line of contact. That is, wherever the front line is now, that's where they would stop. Moscow, however, wants the armed forces of Ukraine to fully withdraw from Donetsk region. Ukraine is ready to do this, but only if Russia does the same to create a free economic zone in the region, which is already supported by the United States of America. However, this option must be approved by Ukrainians in a referendum. And now the issue of the referendum and elections, specifically the conditions under which they will be held, which includes a ceasefire, Zelensky will also discuss with Trump. In addition, the peace plan provides for a non-aggression agreement between the countries with monitoring of the situation along the line of contact. In turn, the United States, NATO, and Europe commit to providing Ukraine with security guarantees similar to Article 5 of the North Atlantic Alliance Charter and to give a military response to Russia in the event of renewed aggression. But, I like that in Washington they are already preparing the ground to respond to Putin's refusal of the peace plan. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham once again called for Trump to radically change the rules of the game if Putin says no to the peace plan. Graham urged Trump to sign his bill, which has 85 co-authors in the Senate. There are only 100 senators and 85 have already supported it. It introduces tariffs against countries that buy cheap Russian oil, to declare Russia a state sponsor of terrorism for abducting Ukrainian children, and to start seizing ships carrying Russian oil, following the example of Venezuela. In other words, to begin seizing tankers from the Shadow Fleet. In addition, the senators suggested giving Ukraine Tomahawk missiles so they could strike drone and missile manufacturing plants on the territory of the Russian Federation. And in Lindsey Graham's opinion, this whole package should force the bold dictator Putin to finally agree to reasonable peace negotiations. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like it, friends, if you found this episode useful and interesting. You can support the work of this YouTube channel with your donation or by becoming a paid sponsor of this YouTube channel through the links and details provided. In the description of this video it clearly says, support the channel Alexei Pechiy. Choose any format that is convenient for you. I will be grateful for any support from you. That's all. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.